I never thought love could rot like this. One night, I followed her. The sister I once swore I'd protect, and watched her climb into a stranger's car like it was the only way left to breathe. What if your escape became your prison? The streetlight hit her face just enough for me to see it wasn't rebellion or thrill anymore. It was survival. Every lie she told was stitched together with pain I refused to see. I'd been too busy pretending we were still kids chasing fireflies instead of ghosts. When she looked back once, her eyes didn't ask for help. They begged me not to see her. And in that moment, I didn't know who I hated more, her or myself, for letting it come to this. How many times can a soul break before it disappears? The next morning, I told myself it was just a dream. People don't just fall that far overnight, right? But her phone was off, and the world was silent, like it was holding its breath for the truth I didn't want to face. Her room smelled of perfume and burnt foil, a strange mix of beauty and ruin. There were pictures of us taped to the mirror, faces smiling from another life. I wanted to scream, to find someone to blame. But all I found was the echo of my own voice asking the same question. When did love stop being enough to save her? People talk about rock bottom like it's one moment, one crash. But it's not. It's 1,000 tiny falls that no one notices. Missed calls, unpaid rent, bruises you pretend not to see. I remember the first time she lied to me. It was about money. Something small. I believed her because I needed to. Believing was easier than admitting I'd already lost her. I drove past that same corner again, the one where I saw her, just to see if she was there. She wasn't. But the silence screamed louder than her presence. I kept thinking, if I could just find her, I could fix it, like I could drag her out of that world with my bare hands. But love doesn't work that way. It's not a key. It's a mirror. It shows you everything you don't want to see. That night, I found her name written on the list at a downtown shelter. Maya T. I almost didn't go in. I was scared of what I'd see. But fear doesn't change the truth. She was sitting on the floor, head down, shaking, holding a styrofoam cup like it was gold. When she looked up, she didn't say my name. She just whispered, "Don't tell, Mom." And all I could think was, we were already too late. Addiction doesn't start with a needle or a pill. It starts with a feeling you can't stand to feel. For Maya, it was loneliness dressed as freedom. I remember the first time she came home high. She was laughing too hard at nothing, her eyes sparkling like they'd stolen the stars. I wanted to believe she was happy. I wanted to believe anything that made her smile again. But behind that laughter was something hungry, something that kept growing every time I looked away. Before the drugs, she used to paint. Her room was covered in colors that didn't belong anywhere else. Then the colors faded. The canvases went blank. I didn't notice at first. I was too busy living my life, assuming she'd figure hers out. But silence has a way of screaming when it's too late. She told me once, it's not about getting high. It's about not feeling low. I didn't understand then. I do now. The world doesn't warn you that numbness can feel like safety. Every hit she took built a wall between her and the pain. But it built one between us, too. I kept knocking, but she stopped answering. It wasn't just the drugs. It was the people. The nights that bled into mornings. The faces that promised escape, but left her emptier. I started seeing her with Tommy. The kind of man who looks like he's always one lie away from breaking. I wanted to fight him. But what good is fighting a ghost someone chose to chase? The last normal day we had, she made pancakes. Burnt them, of course. She said she was fine, and I pretended to believe her. We sat in silence, syrup dripping off cold plates, pretending it was just another morning. But even then, I could see it. The way her hands shook when she lifted her fork, the way she avoided my eyes. I should have said something. Instead, I just smiled, because sometimes pretending is easier than admitting you're watching someone disappear. There's a moment when silence turns to thunder, when love stops whispering and starts screaming. I found her in a motel off the freeway, door half open, air thick with smoke and regret. She looked at me like I was the last person she wanted to see. "Go home," she said, voice shaking. But I couldn't. I wasn't leaving her there. Not with him. Not like that. I told her she was killing herself. She laughed, said she'd already been dead for years. I didn't know which hurt more, hearing it or believing it. Tommy came out of the bathroom, shirtless, tattoos crawling up his arms like bad memories. He told me to leave. I didn't. Maya stepped between us, said, "He's all I've got." The words hit me like a blade. I wanted to grab her, shake her, make her remember who she was. My sister, not his shadow. But all I could do was watch her choose him over herself. Over me. I followed her outside when she stormed out. The rain hadn't stopped, like the sky was crying for us. I begged her to come home. She said home didn't exist anymore. She said she didn't deserve it. Her voice cracked when she said, "You can't save me, Eli. You just don't want to admit it." I didn't answer, because she was right. The next day, I found her things gone. Her bag, her clothes, her paintings. She'd vanished like she was never there. But the smell of smoke still lingered, the kind that seeps into everything and never leaves. I sat on that motel bed until sunrise, holding one of her old bracelets I found under the sheets. It was pink, with a tiny silver heart. She used to say it made her feel safe. Funny how something so small can break you in half. I didn't see her for weeks after that. I called every hospital, every shelter, every friend she used to have. Nothing. Nights turned into months, and I started dreaming about her, standing on train tracks, smiling, saying she finally felt free. I'd wake up gasping, unsure if I was mourning her or myself. Some part of me died the night I let her walk away, and I still don't know if I did the right thing. When someone you love starts disappearing, it doesn't happen all at once. It's slow, like watching a candle drown in its own wax. Weeks passed before I saw her again. She was thinner, quieter, her eyes like glass that had seen too much fire. She said she was fine, the same lie she'd been telling since it all began. But the truth was right there. In the bruises on her arms, the tremor in her voice, the way she couldn't stop looking over her shoulder. She moved into a rundown apartment. No heat, no furniture, just walls that echoed her silence. I visited once. The floor was covered in cigarette burns, the air thick with loneliness. She was trying to hide the shaking in her hands, pretending she didn't notice me noticing. I left some food, some money, and a note that said, "Call me." She never did. Sometimes I think leaving that money was just another way of helping her fall. The day she got evicted, I found her sitting on the curb with everything she owned stuffed into a garbage bag. Her lips were blue, her voice barely a whisper. She said, "It's fine. I've got places to go." I wanted to ask where, but I already knew. The streets have a way of welcoming those who have nowhere else to belong. Then one night I got a call from a stranger. Said he saw her downtown, passed out in an alley. I drove faster than I ever had, heart pounding so loud I couldn't think. When I found her, she was lying on the ground, pale, barely breathing. Her pulse flickered under my fingers like a secret the world was about to steal. I screamed her name until someone called an ambulance. The sirens sounded like they were tearing the sky open. The hospital smelled like bleach and fear. I sat in the waiting room, fingers stained with dirt from the alley, staring at the blood under my nails. A nurse asked if I was family. I nodded, but I didn't feel like it anymore. I felt like a stranger who'd watched her fall and never reached fast enough to catch her. When they finally let me see her, she was hooked to machines that breathed for her. I whispered her name, and for the first time, she didn't answer. I didn't know how long I sat there. Hours, maybe days. Time doesn't move right when you're waiting for someone to wake up. The doctors said, overdose. Like it was just another word. Like it didn't split my world in half. I kept staring at her chest, waiting for it to rise, terrified that the next breath might be her last. I remembered her laugh. Loud, careless, alive, and it felt like a dream I'd imagined. When you love an addict, you start bargaining with ghosts. Just one more chance, I whispered. I'll do better this time, I swear. Mom came later that night. I hadn't seen her cry since Dad's funeral. She stood there looking at Maya, whispering her name like it was a secret she wanted back. You were supposed to protect her, she said. I didn't answer. There's no word strong enough to hold guilt that heavy. I just stared at my sister, tubes running from her arms, and wondered when love turned into punishment. On the second night, I started talking to her, even though she couldn't hear me. I told her everything I never said. How scared I was, how angry I'd been, how much I missed her. I said I'd forgive her if she just opened her eyes. And then for a second her fingers twitched. Maybe it was nothing. Maybe it was everything. Hope is cruel like that. It shows up when you're too tired to believe in it. The doctor said she might not make it. Her body's shutting down, he said softly, like he was afraid of the words. I wanted to scream at him, tell him he was wrong, that she wasn't allowed to leave like this. But I just stood there, numb. I realized I'd been trying to save her for so long that I forgot to save myself. Maybe that's what loving an addict does. It turns your heart into collateral damage. I fell asleep beside her that night, hands still wrapped around hers. When I woke up, the monitors were beeping faster. Her eyelids flickered. For the first time in months, she looked alive. Healy, she whispered. Her voice was weak, but it was real. I leaned closer, barely breathing. She said, I didn't mean to die. I smiled through tears and said, then don't. And in that moment, the world stopped breaking. Coming back from the edge isn't beautiful. It's ugly, slow, and full of pain. When Maya woke up, she cried, not because she was glad to be alive, but because she didn't know how to live anymore. The nurses said she'd need rehab, structure therapy. She said she just needed peace. But peace isn't a place you find. It's a war you fight inside yourself. And every time she shook, every tear that fell, I saw her fight. I saw her trying to come back. Detox was hell. I watched her body betray her, sweating, shaking, screaming for something she swore she didn't need. Grace Alvarez, her counselor, didn't flinch once. She spoke softly, like someone who had seen this storm 1,000 times. This is where she learns what pain means, she told me. This is where she decides if she wants to live. I realized I couldn't fight her battle. I could only stand outside the fire and pray she made it through. Weeks passed. The screams turned to whispers, the tears to tired laughter. I visited every day, bringing coffee and stupid jokes. One afternoon she asked, "Why are you still here?" I told her the truth, because leaving once was enough. Her eyes softened, and for the first time in forever, she smiled. Not the old kind, but a new one. Smaller, realer, full of pain and hope in equal parts. She started therapy sessions, opening old wounds one by one. I waited outside every time, not because I needed to, but because she wanted to know someone was there. One day she came out crying, said, "I don't know who I am without the drugs." I told her, "You're still my sister." That's enough for now. Sometimes healing isn't about answers. It's about holding the questions together until they stop hurting. After 3 months, she was strong enough to leave the facility. I drove her home in silence, afraid to break the fragile peace between us. When we got there, she stood on the porch and looked at the sky like she was seeing it for the first time. "I don't know if I can stay clean," she whispered. I said, "Then we'll fight every day until you do." She nodded, took my hand, and for the first time in years, I believed her. Years don't erase pain. They just teach you how to carry it differently. It's been 3 years since that night in the hospital. Maya still goes to meetings every week. She still wakes up some mornings shaking, but she's here. She's alive, and that's enough. I used to think saving her meant pulling her out of the darkness. Now I know it means standing beside her while she finds her own light. She tells her story like a confession and a promise. Every word is a scar turned into a map, a way for others to find their way out. I stand there listening, realizing how far she's come, how far we've both come. The girl who once sold herself to survive now saves strangers with her truth. And in her voice I hear forgiveness, not for what she did, but for the pain we both carry. After her talk, she walked outside, breathing in the evening air like it was the first clean breath of her life. "Do you still think about it?" I asked. She nodded. "Every day. But now I think about what came after, too." The streetlights hummed quietly above us. It wasn't perfect. It never would be. But sometimes, survival is the most beautiful kind of victory. We visit Dad's grave every year now. She brings wildflowers, says they remind her of before everything went wrong. She always laughs, says she hopes he's proud. I tell her I am. Sometimes we just sit there. No words, no guilt, just silence that finally feels like peace. Maybe that's what forgiveness sounds like. The quiet between two people who finally stopped running. I still drive past that old street sometimes, the one where it all started. The neon signs are still flickering, the same broken corners, the same shadows. But she's not there anymore. She's somewhere better. We both are. Maybe love doesn't save people the way we wish it could. Maybe it just stays, even when everything else falls apart, waiting for the day you're ready to start again.